Fantastic. Can you hear me good, Adam?
Perfectly.
Awesome. Welcome to another Fireside Chat. The structure of the Fireside Chat is basically to cherry pick some of the topics that was covered during our exclusive workshops for our members and our community, to share it openly on our socials for people who might be thinking about getting involved in startups or have a company but it's not part of our community. There's some learnings that is just too good to not share. And yeah, really, really nice to have you with us today. Thanks so much for the workshop and your time.
My pleasure to be with you, Seb. I'm a big fan of yours. I think you know.
Awesome. So the structure of those sessions, basically like fireside chat format. We talk on a couple of topics, and people who tune in sometimes on our Facebook, sometimes on LinkedIn, sometimes on our YouTubes, can jump in with questions, and we'd be happy to bring that up and see if there's some perspectives that Dr. Dorsey can share with us here today. So maybe we should start out with just a quick introduction. Do you want to share a few
Sure.
initial words about the Silicon Valley psychologist, Dr. Adam Dorsey?
I'd be happy to share. I happen to know him fairly well. I have been in the corporate sector in the US and Japan for a number of years, and then I transitioned later in life into becoming a psychologist, which really gave me a good framework from which to see the people I see in my private practice. They tend to be the movers and shakers of Silicon Valley, highly successful, intelligent folks who entrust me with their time. And I also have created a resiliency program at two companies. One was Facebook for their counterterrorism and their child safety teams to help them deal with some of the stressors that went for 4 years and went international. And I believe it's still going on. And in that time, I've also worked with a cloud computing company out of Cambridge, Massachusetts called DigitalOcean, recently went public. Phenomenal. Been there for nearly 5 years. Love working with both teams. So I love doing this type of corporate resiliency work as well as my private practice work. I'm also the host of a podcast in its 130th episode today called Super Psyched. It's a psychology podcast that goes everywhere and discusses everyone with everyone, just about every possible topic that could boost your life, whether at work or at home or both. Last but not least, I've done a couple TEDx talks, one on men and emotions. It's called The Emotions, the Data That Men Miss. And the other is on friendship and adulthood, something that is a very important topic that is often overlooked as a subject. There have been few books on the topic recently. Fortunately, it's high time. So that's what I do, and I happen to love what I do. And one of the keys to what I'm going to be sharing with you in terms of the technology that we've found in the positive psychology space relates to what fuels me and allows me to work long days and love every minute of it, just about, and will certainly allow you to cultivate that in your work and possibly even have ripple effects to your teams.
Awesome. So again, really appreciate you taking time to share your insights with us. I want to dive right into like a topic that you covered from many different directions. How can entrepreneurs be more happy?
Yeah, and the first thing I would say is that entrepreneurs are still people. They may be so engaged as entrepreneurs that they forget about their humanhood. And the same technology that applies to all humans applies to entrepreneurs. And it's even better because as entrepreneurs, the happiness that you feel will be contagious. And the anxiety that you feel, or perhaps the misery that you feel, will also be contagious. So it will be important for you to engage in these conscious exercises. One of the most important things that you can do as an entrepreneur is zoom into why you're doing this above and beyond the idea of an IPO or some financial goal. But why is this important intrinsically? One of the things that we know from a lot of research is that the intrinsic elements of why you do what you do matters more to fueling your energy than the outcomes. The outcomes, if you just focus on those, you'll get good short term results, but it won't be a nice long burning fuel that will keep you in the game. If you can zero into the why of what you're doing, who are the stakeholders, including your employees, and of course the end users, and why it is such an important thing that you're doing, why it relates to you as a human being in terms of your values, in terms of your contribution to the betterment of humankind. I know it's almost a cliche when a person is in a startup. One of the things that we tend to say, and even Silicon Valley, the great HBO show reflected this. They said, to make the world a better place. That's fine. And that's a very good thing to say, but zero in on what that actually means to you as a company. And the more intrinsic data you're able to generate about what it is that you're providing as a service or a product, the better fuel you will feel as you wake up in the morning to go take on your day. And the mojo that you experience, the charisma that you experience. And by the way, charisma can be defined as the power, warmth, and presence. I can't really get into that topic hugely, but charisma is something that is also palpable by all stakeholders. And the absence of it is also sadly palpable. And one of the things that will fuel your charisma is your conviction about a thing. One of the things that I love about what Susan Cain has found in her research on introverts is that an introvert with conviction appears to be an extrovert because they have so much energy about what they're doing. And that conviction comes from the intrinsic nature of your work. That's thing one. Thing two would be gratitude or noticing what is good. We tend to look for problems when we're doing our work. We tend to be really scared. We tend to over imagine the things that could come in and harm us. And that is part of our what's called our negativity bias. The negativity bias is very important. It has allowed us to survive as a species. It's where we overvalue negative data than as opposed to positive data. In fact, it generally takes on average for example, in a couple, you need to say 5 positive things to your partner to 1 negative thing. So a ratio of 5 to 1 for you to be in a net positive zone. If you were to ask yourself, how many negative things am I saying at work versus positive things? I would imagine that the ratio for many people is actually in reverse, 5 negatives to 1 positive.
Yeah.
We need to increase the positive. And it also needs to be authentic. It cannot be phony. But one of the ways that we do this is by tapping into the gratitude of what we're doing, like, and the why of what we're doing, and looking for what went well by
Yep.
consciously looking for what went well.
It's so hard for a founder to have that type of focus because you always look for how, like, you're solving problems, uh, uh, turning out, closing down fires, trying to keep your company alive. Like, you constantly think about what's gonna get bad and trying to fix those things, and it's really tough to sort of find that balance in your professional life. Um, what do you think? Like, now we're in a very tough spot in terms of from a macroeconomic point of view, and in some teams morale can be a bit bad. We talked a little bit about like leadership on those terms. Could you just mention a little bit what you think are good ways to sort of improve the morale in teams that are struggling in tough times? Many are struggling now.
So, regardless of external data and macroeconomics, and even regardless of the company for which you work, the biggest predictor of employee engagement and happiness, and even dedication, the is going to be the quality of the relationship that they share with the person to whom they report. And if they are reporting to a really lovely person who takes genuine interest in them as a human being and as an employee and tries to help bring out their best and really is able to coach them well with kindness and the other basic things that humans on average need, and actually takes the time to get to know the person to who's reporting to them. The old axiom of, we don't really care what a person knows until we know that they care. And that's going to be a basic thing. We are still humans in this game, irrespective of the amazing company for whom we work, irrespective of the macroeconomic phenomena that is occurring outside the company. Are we connecting well to the person on our who's our boss, as well as our team in general? So team building, those basic things, and being a kind, conscientious, caring boss who actually cares about the human connection and zeroes in. We all care about different things. The idea of the golden rule is actually not a great one, because it's the idea of do unto others as you'd want done to you. A good leader will zero in on who their report is and figure out what the target is with that particular individual. I interviewed Coach Steve Kerr of the Golden State Warriors. He has won more titles in the last 7 years than any other coach. And he speaks to each of his players as individuals. He is not the same. He's still the same Steve Kerr, but he is a little different because the chemical composition between him and player one versus player two is going to be different. And he pivots accordingly. A good leader will do that with the people who reports to them.
That makes perfect sense. What about when, like, if you turn to yourself and your emotions? We talked a little bit about that as well. There are certain scenarios, especially as a founder, things go up and down. You're struggling as a company. You might be dramatically affected in your private life, and it could be really tough to keep that mental fitness and be performing in best possible way. Uh, how could you, like, get control of your emotions? Are there some ways to go deeper into yourself to better handle what's going on?
Yeah, so it starts with you. And the first question is, what is your relationship with your emotions? Maybe you grew up, like many of us did, being told, don't listen to those finicky things called emotions, listen only to reason. And what ends up happening is we quash our emotional data. The emotional data is actually important. If we actually remove from our brains the emotional centers, we can't make any decisions, because decisions are incumbent upon emotional data as well. Anthony Damasio out of MIT has shown that if we remove the emotional centers from our brain, we literally cannot make decisions at all. So if you don't think that your emotional data is important, at least consider that. And how we do it is it starts with us. Ask yourself, do I know what my emotions even are? Many of us are themes and variations on something called alexithymic. Alexithymic means that we don't even know how to put words to our emotions. The absence of lexi, words, thymia, feeling, the inability to put words to feelings. Can you do that? And if you can, the emotions will not drive you. You will be able to have some say in how you respond to your emotions. Oftentimes, anger is something we like to quash. Anger is actually a very important emotion, for example. It usually means that there's the presence or at least the perception of an injustice. And the question is, how can we get our smarter brain, our higher cortex, to listen to the location of the anger, which is in all likelihood in the amygdala, which is responsible for fear and anger. We don't want this part of our brain to be the decision maker. We want this part, and they need to be in communication. So the first thing we need to do is actually feel and identify those emotions, like be able to quietly ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And what are those feelings asking of me? And if we're able to ask, what are they asking of me? We may be able to involve our higher cortex and say, you know what I need to do with that is I need to go for a workout. I just went through something really rough. And if I just go into the next thing, I will say something that could harm a relationship. I need to go for a run, or I need to call a friend, or I need to write in my journal. Each person may cope differently. The idea of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger is not true. It's how we cope with the stressors. That's what really makes us stronger. What doesn't kill us may actually harm us and harm our relationships if we don't cope well. Uh, so what doesn't kill you can make you profoundly weaker. And one of the ways that we get stronger is by listening to and responding to our emotions intelligently and asking ourselves, gosh, I'm noticing I'm really angry at this person. Maybe it means I need to have a tough conversation, but in a way that honors the individual and doesn't attack and assail their character. We want to keep the relationship intact. It takes a long time to build a relationship. It takes a very short time to kill a relationship. Let's find a way to use our emotional data to make us smarter, more relational. And by the way, these ripple effects will be felt throughout the org. If you think that it just ends with you, it doesn't. People will feel what you're feeling on some level because we are social creatures. Our brains are wired to tune in to other people's radio stations to use an antiquated technology, or I should say antiquated because it's still being used, but less used.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's also like the most challenging thing is to, like, when you have such strong emotions and you're tired and you're stressed and you're frustrated, and then you're supposed to sit and like have constructive conversations. It's like, it's really tough.
Yeah, that is almost a perfect storm scenario in
Yeah.
which you're very likely to have a not so great exchange.
Yeah.
And being able to just notice those and ask yourself, what do I need to do now? And if you think that this is some new agey or crazy idea, people who are in the military who deal with IEDs, also known as improvisational explosive devices, the guys who are trying to undo those have to be emotionally intelligent because they have to control for their fear. And anybody who doesn't want to acknowledge fear because they feel like they'll be wimpified, it takes fear to experience courage. So fear is actually a very important emotion. Sometimes it causes us to respect what we're about to do and be more conscientious, such as dealing with a potentially explosive employee or an IED. Um, so yeah, really, really knowing your emotional states and how what you're needing at any given time. Babies, we know that they generally need one of three things. They need to be fed, they need to be napped, or they need to have their diapers changed. As adults, when we don't pay attention to those parts of ourselves, there is an internal baby that can show up, and it's not a great thing. So, what we want to do is take care of the babies that are inside our outer adults.
Yeah. Um, One thing that I noticed during the chat, during the workshop, also that really resonated well with me is, and I could definitely see me um, taking more time to think about my health and meditating on challenges, to make better decisions and improve the state of everything, not just my business but also my personal life. Um, Do you want to just mention quickly when you talked about the tree bath, the Japanese thing? I found that really valuable.
Sure, I'd love to. So, one of the things that is really amazing about these times is we have this 35,000-year-old piece of technology between our ears. It's called the human brain. It hasn't changed very much from V1. I may be getting the iPhone 14 today, hooray! But
Congrats.
and I'm which is huge. But I do not have a new brain. I'm having to upgrade the firmware through various hacks, and a lot of them actually mean going back to who we were before we were in these little boxes called cars and these little boxes called rooms with this weird lighting that is totally unnatural to our 35,000-year-old brains. A tree bath brings us back to who we actually really are. We're still really cavemen walking around in these really slick new startups. And the fact is, we need to get to nature. It's called biophilia. In Japan, there's a notion called taking a tree bath. And my wife will tell me every time we go for a hike that my face literally changes when I'm in nature. I'm far more relaxed. I'm far more chill than I am when I'm in this space that requires my attention and intentions called work. And I love my work. And I also need to take a tree bath from time to time. So there are two parts of the autonomic nervous system. One is called the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight, flight, and freeze. It's often very active when we're at work, and it's very important. But the bad news is the cortisol production, our endogenous hormones, are often stress related. And what we need to do is activate the parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest, our tendon befriend part of our nervous system. One of the best ways of doing that is getting out to nature, especially hearing birdsong. Believe it or not, there are studies that indicate that hearing birdsong changes our physiology and certainly our relationship to anxiety and other distressors. Being in sunlight, getting actual sunlight, photons, big deal. When we're in these rooms, we're at probably at most at around 900 lux. We need at least 5,000, ideally 10,000 lux every day for about 30 minutes for our vitamin D production to show up. It's anti-anxiety agents and a host of other positive factors come about. So far we've named actually biophilia in the form of the tree bath. We've actually named the photon effects and the bird songs. And just we also know that moving our bodies is a great way to reduce our stress. Bessel van der Kolk, who's one of the leading trauma experts in the world, wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score. You got to take care of your body and it will take care of you. And taking a tree bath, walking through, will allow some of the yuckies that you're experiencing through your day to kind of have a way to come out rather than it coming out of the side of your mouth and harming a project or worse, a relationship.
It's really, really, really insightful. Thanks so much. Before we wrap up, I would like to just touch upon one topic that you mentioned during the workshop that I've seen in some of the best entrepreneurs in the world. Would you mind just sharing a couple of sentences on what you mean with a learner's mindset? It's like the minute you talked about that, I saw definitely like there's a connection with really successful companies there. And
Yeah, so Carol Dweck out of Stanford has published extensively on this idea, and it's been repeated and repeated that there are two basic mindsets that people tend to hold about a skill or a thing, such as there are smart people and there are dumb people, there are math people and there are non-math people. That is what's called a fixed mindset. And most of us grew up being told by well-intended adults, I don't think you're really a math person. And a growth mindset basically states that anyone can learn math if they want to badly enough. A really good case in point, a lot of people, I mean, I really love Sweden for a lot of reasons, but one of which is the polylingualism. I mean, most people speak a second language. In the United States, that's less common. My father, who is not a language person, he was in the fixed mindset of being a non-language person, and I would agree with him. He's not exceptional in terms of his talents, but at 60 years old, when he retired, he asked me, how do I learn Spanish? And I am a language person. And I said, you want to learn to speak Spanish? That's great. Here are the 3 things you need to do. And he did them. And he speaks good Spanish now at north of 80 years old. He speaks really functional Spanish.
fantastic.
A so-called a non fill in the blank can learn with adequate of that growth mindset, recognizing that all humans can learn a thing if they want to badly enough. And the why is really important here, because if you're led by the why, you will take care of the how on average. The idea that we are Homo sapiens has been challenged by one of my colleagues, and they says that we are actually Homo symbolicus. We are actually meaning-based creatures, and if you can tune into the why, and Simon Sinek talks about it a lot, start with why, we are able to build from there and really engage that learner's mindset.
Awesome. Just to wrap up, do you want to send some word of advice to the founders out there now? Some of them, like 49%, there's recent studies showing that 49% of entrepreneurs are struggling with mental issues. It could be a bunch of different things, but no one likes to talk about how they feel because they think that it will affect their business negatively. Do you just want to send a couple of words of advice for founders out there who think that it's not okay to talk about your feelings or seek help?
Yeah, what I would say to them is that one of the things that we need to do in this lifetime is live authentically. If we try to quash these really inconvenient things called emotions, they will still show up. We can put black tape over our dashboard and say that the car does not need an oil change. It still needs an oil change. And the question is, are you going to face the facts or are you going to try to quash the facts? And one of the things that we know for sure is that many of the top leaders use psychotherapy or executive coaching. I highly recommend it. I've done it a lot myself. It really serves as a great tool to channel those emotions so we can use them more intelligently. We want that emotional data to be used intelligently and to the benefit of all stakeholders. You are very important. You are perceived, but people are looking at you. You may think I'm just me, but you are not just you. You are perceived as a leader by the people who work for you, and they are looking to you to know, how am I doing? Am I safe? Do I want to continue working here? Do I want to quiet quit? Do I want to double down and engage even harder on the company's mission? Um, and how well you take care of yourself is going to be a big part. You are more than your results. Oftentimes, we begin to think of ourselves as machines, and we're not. We have 35,000-year-old brains. To corroborate that idea, we are actually humans, and we need to take care of that first. So if we start with who we are, attend to our emotions, change the baby's diaper internally, in other words, maybe take that shower because we really need it for our mental health, uh, in whatever form that comes, whether it's working out, having a good engagement with a therapist, having a cup of coffee with a friend, listening into that emotional data so that we can lead with our best musculature. A final thought on that front: if you don't believe me, try this out at home. Say something that have somebody else in the room holding, putting their hand on your arm, your outstretched arm. Say something that is true and then say something that is not true. And for example, I absolutely love gelato. So if I say I love gelato, I'm really nice and strong. But if I say I love liver, which is something I hate, I will actually be a little bit weaker here. So we can
That's so
try
crazy.
so we can go through life trying to not acknowledge things or to quash things or to try to live a lie. We will not be very strong. It might get us through a tough situation. You may think, oh, I've done that before, and maybe it got you through a short-term goal. It will not win the long-term race. If you want to win the long-term race, you've got to take care of those emotions.
Fantastic, Adam. Really good final words. Yeah, I've definitely learned a lot today, and I know our community and those who are tuning in did. Thanks so much for those who tuned in, and Adam, really appreciate you taking time to share your insights. You should check out Dr. Adam Dorsey's podcast called Super Psyched. I'm not endorsed to say this. I'm saying it because I like it myself. It's on any podcast platform you listen to, and yeah, stay tuned for more sessions. And we hope that everyone is doing great. And tell your loved ones what you like, and show gratitude. And yeah, that's a wrap. Thanks so much, Dr. Adam Dorsey, for joining us.
Such a pleasure to be with you. And if any of you need any form of team building services or outreach, I am available by Zoom, or my gosh, I'd love to come out to hang with you in Stockholm.
Oh, we're going to go to so many restaurants if you're here. I know where to take you. How can they find you?
At www.dradamdorsey.com. That's DradamDorsay, my full name with my title in front of it. and that's my website. And you can see my TED Talks and
they're on YouTube.
So.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Have a great day now, and wishing you a fantastic evening, those who tuned in and on our time zone. See you. Tack. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ed.